BGRC meeting. I am going to quickly hand over the reins of this meeting to Stephanie Lessing from the Collins Center, who you can see right there in the corner. The reason she's not here is because we couldn't get the good conference room. And because we don't have the good conference room, the audio is really bad in this room. And so she agreed to do this remotely so that she is actually, it's all being recorded. You'll be able to hear all her comments. You'll be able to see and hear at the same time. Before we get started, is there anything, there are agendas on the table if anybody would like one. Is there anything that's not on the agenda that anybody wants to talk about before we get started? Seeing there will be none. I also want to introduce Nina Uppen in the back, who is our new recording clerk.
Thank you.
So, okay, Stephanie, I'm going to hand it to you, and then I'm going to move you off a little bit, I think, and so that we can see the slides.
Great. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time this evening. And thank you, Betsy, for the introduction. Again, my name is Stephanie Lessing. I'm a management analyst at the Collins Center. And tonight I'll be presenting the public survey responses that were collected for the Burlington Charter Review Committee. The purpose of this survey was to collect public feedback to make sure that the review committee's recommendations reflect the needs and values of residents. And I'd like to start with a big thank you to the Burlington Charter Review Committee for their enthusiasm and patience and dedication to this task. And thank you to everyone who assisted us in publicizing this survey and for everyone who submitted responses. We very much appreciate your feedback. After a collaborative survey creation process with the committee, the survey was distributed on April 29th, 2026.
Zoom out on the Zoom. No. You have to zoom out on the Zoom.
Hold on a minute.
It's zoomed in 100%. Top middle. Again, down to 100%.
Sorry, Stephanie, we had a little size issue. We had to resize it. Go ahead.
No problem. Okay, all set?
Yep.
Okay, so we started the survey on April 29th, and it was available for submission until June 3rd. To publicize the survey, the Charter Review Committee mailed postcards to all residential addresses in town, also posted announcements on the town website, social media pages, the Burlington Buzz, in town newsletters, and distributed flyers across town with a QR code to the survey. Paper copies of the survey were also available at the Town Hall and the Council on Aging. A total of 1,151 responses were collected, and that exceeded our goal by more than 300 responses. At the beginning of the survey, before we got to the main questions, we asked respondents for demographic information so we could understand survey representation compared to the full town. You can see that in this chart. Basically, the racial composition of the survey is pretty representative of Burlington overall. The 65 plus age group is a little bit overrepresented in the survey by about 10%. We also asked questions regarding home ownership, how long a respondent has been living in town, whether they're registered to vote in Burlington, if they own a business, if they're a parent of a Burlington student, and whether they currently or previously served in a role in town government. And before I walk through the findings, I just want to briefly touch on our data quality and cleaning protocol. With any public survey, the primary question is always, how do we know that these responses are legitimate? Out of our more than 1,100 total submissions, we conducted a multi-step data audit. The first step was a completeness check. So we excluded partial responses where respondents did not complete the substantive questions within the survey. And that ensures that our findings represent deliberative and thoughtful feedback. The second was what we call a duplicative analysis, and that means that we screen for duplicate submission patterns by analyzing IP addresses and also submission timestamps and response clustering. So we're looking for identical submission profiles that are occurring within the same IP address, excluding public Wi-Fi hotspots, and then duplicates are removed. But out of our over 1,000 responses, there were negligible instances of potential duplication. While an open public survey cannot track individual identities with 100% certainty, the sample size and consistency in the data gave us very strong, statistically sound snapshots of the overall community sentiment. All right, to get into the findings, for each question, I'm going to start with the overall findings and then provide some insights by segmented groups where something interesting came up for all of these. These were all parts of the full cohort that I analyzed. So the first part of the survey focused on board and committee members. And the first question asked which elected boards, committees, and positions should be appointed by the select board or continue to be elected by residents. The majority of survey respondents selected elected over appointed for every position that we listed. The top 3 positions with the highest percentage favoring the elected option were the planning board, the town clerk, and recreation commission. As I said, I analyzed this by subgroup, by all the demographic questions, relationship with the town, and involvement in town government. And for this question, I saw an interesting pattern with the years a resident has been living in Burlington, where the longer they've been here, the more likely they are to prefer elected positions. So just to give you one example, the Board of Health was the most clear. Among the residents that have been living in town for less than 5 years, 40% of them prefer that this board be elected, compared to 52% of those that have been living in Burlington for 6 to 15 years, and 57% of those who have been in town for more than 15 years. So as the years in towns go up, the preference for electing the Board of Health members increases. Next up, we asked which boards, committees, or positions should have limits on how many years a person can serve. Majority support for term limits was expressed for the school committee, select board, planning board, zoning board of appeals, board of assessors, housing authority, and the ways and means committee. All of those got more than 50%. In the subgroup analysis, the length of time a resident has lived in Burlington correlates with their views on term limits as well. So long-term residents show less support, with majorities favoring term limits on only 7 positions, while residents of 5 years or less prefer term limits on 14 of the 19 listed positions. And residents who are not involved in town government are more likely to favor term limits, with majority supporting them for 11 positions. Meanwhile, town meeting members, town board or committee members, and town government employees only had majorities supporting term limits for the school committee and the select board. The next question had response options along an agreement scale, and the statement asked how much they agreed with Burlington's boards and committees reflect the community as a whole in terms of age, gender, and racial or national backgrounds present within the town. The largest group of responses was neutral, with 25%. 21% chose somewhat agree, and 21% chose somewhat disagree. So we couldn't draw any conclusions from this very balanced distribution. In a subgroup analysis, I found that disagreement with that statement has an inverse relationship with age. This means that younger residents feel that demographic representation in town government is lacking. 49% of them, aged 25 to 44, disagreed with this statement. Meanwhile, residents over age 65 tended to feel adequate representation, with 31% agreeing with the statement and only 22% disagreeing. Interestingly, survey respondents who currently or have previously served in town government roles were more likely to see representational gaps than those who are not involved. So town government involved groups had disagreement percentages ranging from 41% to 51%, but it's very high in comparison to people who are not involved in town government, 32% of whom disagreed with that statement. And a similar question asked whether Burlington's boards and committees reflect the community's range of opinions. Again, opinions were mixed here, reflecting that range of viewpoints. Sentiment is split among almost evenly, with 30.7% choosing somewhat or strongly agree, while 33.4% chose somewhat or strongly disagree. In the subgroup analysis, residents over the age of 65 were most likely to believe that the town boards and committees do reflect the local diversity of opinions, 36% agreed, while there was no clear consensus among residents under the age of 65. And that really reflects the broad spectrum of opinions that are present within the town, where some people do feel represented and others not so much. Survey respondents involved in town government were more likely to believe that diverse opinions are represented, despite their skepticism about demographic diversity. A range of 37% to 44% of the town government groups either somewhat or strongly agreed with this statement. And keeping with this agreement scale for the next 3 questions, this statement was, the Burlington town government is generally effective and accountable to residents' needs. Nearly half of all survey participants expressed confidence in town government leadership. 48.3% chose strongly or somewhat strongly agree, while 27.5% chose somewhat or strongly disagree. Survey respondents were then provided with some space to explain their thoughts and experiences regarding the effectiveness or accountability of Burlington's town government. Just a quick side note here, all of the open-ended responses are presented in the report in Appendix F. These responses are raw and unedited, with the exception of the removal of names of individuals. So in alignment with best practices, the title or the position of the person noted is provided, but no names. As I go through some of these themes, I'll give you some numbers where they were easily accessible, how many people said something, but they're almost always underestimates of the number of real comments addressing that theme. And this is because there were 1,000 comments and most of them addressed multiple themes, so I categorized them by their dominant issue addressed. The first that I'm starting off with is very small, actually. 2 instances of conflict of interest as a theme came up. Specifically, there was one note about town employees who are also elected members of town meeting and how this presents a conflict of interest if they are voting on a budget of a department that they also work in. So just a note there, that is charter relevant. Next is a lack of transparency into board and committee meetings. A couple of comments pointed out that some boards and committees do not televise or record their meetings and do not post agendas, materials, or minutes in a timely fashion. Another comment mentioned that it's nearly impossible to tell how each town meeting member voted, which prevents transparency. And there was also a comment that proposed an attendance requirement for both elected and appointed members of boards and committees. Next is the ability of residents to be heard by town government leaders and representation of boards and committees. That came up a handful of times in the comments. Some of these comments focused on feeling that there were boards or committees that seem as if they have been controlled by one person who's been on that board for a long period of time. Others feel that dissenting views are somewhat stifled, and still others feel that boards and committees are not reflecting the community as a whole, particularly when it comes to representation of age groups. A couple of comments pertain to having dedicated channels for resident feedback, and others focused on term limits to keep boards and committees representational of the community. And that came up, that term limit idea, despite asking about it in the multiple choice questions, came up 11 times in the comments. The balance between development and resource management was the next theme. So, for example, one comment questioned whether the planning board, school committee, and the ways and means committees worked together and discussed the impact of new housing complexes, how it would affect school enrollment and capacity and traffic congestion, both in the short term and long term. Concerns were raised that there's been too much residential and business development, and that businesses seem to be prioritized over resident needs and the preservation of green space. There were around 17 or so comments about these 2 topics combined. And an additional 16 comments noted water restrictions, which were frustrating to people because they were noting how many new homes, condos, and apartment buildings were being constructed. Meanwhile, they weren't able to water their front lawns. Next was finance, also tax rates and their impact specifically on older residents. Comments reflected economic concerns with respect to housing affordability and high tax rates affecting older retired residents' abilities to stay in their homes or even to stay in the town. 11 comments focused on tax rates. And then there were another 15 comments with concerns raised about capital planning, budgets, deficits, debt, and high taxes on businesses. And last theme here was a lot of comments pertaining to schools and the school committee. 18 comments were about the school committee specifically. Several of these noted that the school committee is not transparent, lacks accountability, and should have term limits implemented. And 10 comments expressed dissatisfaction with the high school decision, and a few specifically talked about the handling of the grant application. So again, this is just an overview of the main themes that I found. There are probably 10 pages of the comments that are available in Appendix F. Next, regarding how well the boards and committees work together and with the select board and the best interest of the town, a majority of residents were pretty neutral on this, had no opinion, 46.8% altogether. 35.5% chose somewhat or very well, and only 17.7% chose somewhat or very poorly. And the last scale question here, oh, I went too fast. The last scale question was, how easy is it for you to offer your own opinion to the various boards and committees so that your thoughts can be represented? The majority of responses did not have a definitive opinion, likely because they have not tried. Among those who have taken a stance, sentiment leaned slightly positive, where 28.4% chose very or somewhat easy, and 21.7% felt it was somewhat or very difficult to provide their opinions to boards and committees. Moving into part 2, this covered questions regarding the town administrator. So we first started with questions regarding town administrator authority, and the first question was, should the town administrator, with the approval from the select board or the relevant elected committee, have the authority to appoint and remove town employees? A very clear majority supports granting that authority with 58.7%. 6% chose only some departments, and then they were able to write in their thoughts, if they had any, about which departments. And of those write-ins, most of them were about excluding emergency services or only allowing this authority for appointed positions that the town administrator oversees. We then asked if the town administrator should have authority of, this went too fast again. Second. Okay. We asked if the town administrator should have authority over day-to-day operations for all employees, regardless of department, and again, a majority of 57.6% approved. Looking at town government involvement, views diverge dramatically between the municipal bodies that are overseeing policy versus the personnel who would be directly subjected to centralized oversight. So about 60% of town meeting members, board or committee members, and residents who are not involved in town government supported this authority, but town government employees were really split. 43% of town government employees said yes, and 41% said no. And next, we asked which title residents preferred for the chief administrative officer. 36.3% chose town manager, 28.9% chose town administrator, and 33.1%, the majority, had no preference. In part 3, we asked which government structure Burlington should use. A clear majority of 60.7% of responses chose to maintain a representative town meeting form of government. 15.8% chose a mayor-council form of government, and 10.3% chose council-mayor form of government. In part 4, we asked if Burlington should adopt a recall provision that allows residents to vote to remove an elected official from office before the end of their term. An overwhelming majority with 80.2% said yes. In the subgroup analysis, I looked at years living in town here. Support for a recall provision was inversely related to tenure, with highest support among residents of 5 years or less with 91%, and lowest among residents of over 15 years with 79%. But again, really clear majority still favoring a recall provision across all of the subgroups. And there was also a clear trend with government involvement, where all 3 groups within town government preferred a recall position with at least 2/3 majorities, while 83% of residents who are not involved in town government prefer a recall provision. The last 3 questions, part 5, asked about town communications. The first asked how well informed residents feel about town government decisions, activities, and issues. There was some division here, with 48.7% choosing very well or somewhat well informed. while 30.1% chose somewhat or very uninformed, and 21.2 chose neutral. Digging in a little bit more here, we provided some open-ended space for residents to provide some feedback about communications. Again, these are unedited responses in Appendix N, with the exception of the removal of names and inclusion only of titles and positions. So there were a lot of very positive comments left here. The new email newsletter has been really well received, and residents really like the Burlington Buzz and their ability to view BCAT recordings of meetings on YouTube. Generally, residents want to hear directly from town government with more detail and in a timely, regular, and consistent basis. This came up a lot. There were remarks about delays in getting information out, making it hard for residents to stay updated and participating. So they really value the direct communication and preferably in a way that they know to expect it. There were 4 comments about how the town website could be better utilized for publicizing important information. A very large number of people, my count was 38, reported not receiving any information or not knowing where to sign up for alerts, and that could be addressed on the town website as well. 7 comments mentioned difficulty finding town news outside of Facebook and their distaste for using Facebook as a news source due to the nature of the comments or not wanting to be on social media. So they request more diverse forms of communication and also not just internet-based communication. Some feel that the use of reverse 911 is inappropriate for announcements that are not emergencies. 5 comments addressed this, with 3 pointing out that it shouldn't be used for non-emergencies. And there were also 9 complaints from residents not receiving responses to their inquiries of town government officials. And lastly, we asked residents how they would prefer to receive communication and updates from the town in the future. Email newsletters were the most popular choice, followed by posts on the town website, the Burlington Buzz, and mailed notices and newsletters. And that concludes my overview of the survey results, and I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Give her back. Which one? This is this one.
Do you want to? Perfect.
Yeah.
She probably has to stop sharing.
Yeah, you might need to stop checking.
You does though.
Yeah. There we go.
Is that big enough?
That's fine. That's fine. We can see it. All right. Okay, so that was a lot of information. And for those of you who read through the survey, there's an awful lot there, but it's definitely so nicely distilled down to us, for us in less than half an hour. So that was great. Questions?
While we know the survey is going to be up on the website, can I also ask that this presentation,
Yes.
a copy of it be put up
Yeah.
there?
Yes, absolutely. I have a copy of both.
Okay.
And in that, will the notes that Stephanie was using be also like the elaborations will be in the notes or no?
Stephanie, did you include the notes with your, with the slides?
I did not, but I can add them and then send them back to you again.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
I have a question about the Recreation Commission question. 2 of the positions on the Recreation Commission are elected but appointed as well. I took the survey, but I can't remember what the language was like in that question. Do we know exactly what that came across? If people really want those individuals to be elected to that position, or are they okay with them being elected officials who are then appointed to the Recreation?
Stephanie, how is the recreation question worded?
The recreation question is part of a larger question about which of these boards or committees and positions would you like to be elected versus appointed. So it was 1 among 19. And so if someone answered that question, they would choose either elected or appointed. It does not tell the survey respondent at the time of the survey whether that board is currently appointed or elected. It only asks which should it be.
And then it didn't like disambiguate.
Yeah.
That some of them are appointed, some are elected by the populace.
I don't think that's something that a lot of people know about, and I think could possibly help people make a decision for that question. So I don't know if we know, if there's any useful information out of that question, given that they didn't have the full background.
Yeah,
So
so
thanks. I mean, I think it's a great question to ask.
can you hear Megan's comments?
Yes.
Okay, is there a response to that in terms of?
I am looking for I can tell you the breakdown of percentage of people who chose elected versus appointed, but there was not information provided to them about the current structure of how many are appointed versus elected.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I know, like, when we were in the whole town administrator questions, and I think I may have asked you, Betsy, that I think a lot of people don't understand the responsibilities of what the town administrator does, and that maybe they were not informed in, who they are responsible for hiring, and that, reviewing, et cetera. And, of course, I think there's some people saying it's better they don't know. But on the other hand, if you're making suggestions on, what they should be doing, you should know what they are doing. So I felt like maybe, we're not getting as accurate of information or responses as we could have if people really understood the full scale of what the town administrator does in general.
I think, though, it's nearly impossible to educate people on what's currently being managed. And I think also, if they understand what's being managed and they have no issue with how it currently operates because they don't have a good sense for how town government operates in general, that would also skew their answer. So rather than how would you like this compared to today, having the question and answer of what do you think is best allows for less bias than if we were to be like, okay, you have to be the most informed person in town in order to answer this question. Because let's be honest, there's never going to be a case that the large majority of residents are informed of how town government works. So when we are trying to make decisions to represent the realistic body of our residents, we have to take that into account.
Any other questions for Stephanie? Of the process or the results? Again, this is all going to be posted on the website. So you can get into the meat of the different attachments. I know the committee has all of that information today. I think there are a couple of tweaks, Stephanie, you mentioned to a couple of the initial pages of the presentation from the one that we got originally. So, but nothing substantive. I mean, the answers are all the same. And as she mentioned, it was, the specific names of people have been taken out and just their positions are listed because we felt that was kind of best practice and in the most respectful way to handle it. You guys are easy, easy.
I have a question about the data clearing. How many, you might have said this, but forgive me if you did. How many surveys were removed as suspected duplicates or suspicious surveys responses?
One.
Okay.
That's pretty good.
I think it was somebody that thought that their submission didn't go through, and it was very, very clear. I'm very careful about removing, and I try to be very certain that it's a duplicate before I remove somebody's work. There were around 250 that were removed because they were so incomplete that there was nothing to analyze.
Where did you find the missing questions, or was it that they answered like one or two and they stopped, or did they skip over some? Like, I don't remember if you could skip or
Yep. None of the questions were required, so people could skip over some of them and then, pick it back up farther down through the survey if they just didn't have an opinion on many questions. And I did see that from time to time, but it was more often that people just stopped in the middle and did not resume afterward. If they had a certain number of questions answered, I'd leave in that survey response. But the majority that I ended up removing because they were incomplete would only answer the demographic questions. And as soon as the first real question started, they stopped. And some of them were because they weren't Burlington residents and realized the survey wasn't really for them.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
We're gonna have the full survey, the full text of the survey and everything in both on the website, but also in the report, right?
Correct. Yeah. So, yeah, good point, Nikki. So as for the people who may not be aware that when we finish the charter, the other part of our job is to create a report. And the report is going to talk about the process and all of that. And we'll include the charter, and we'll have a number of attachments, of which the survey will be one. So that will also be part of the report, as will, we have the stakeholder interviews write up and other activities that we have done. I think interestingly, the stakeholder interviews pretty much support what we're hearing on the community. I mean, I'm looking at other members of the stakeholder group, that the impressions or the feedback we got is very consistent, kind of across the board from what we heard from the stakeholder interviews we did. And as a reminder of who is a stakeholder, it would be employees, members of boards and committees, members of the business community,
Town meeting members.
town meeting members, thank you. So kind of a cross section of folks in Burlington.
I have a question. Stephanie, was there anything in this that surprised you? I mean, other than perhaps the recall being so high?
That I actually wasn't all that surprised by the recall provision being so high. I think that that's kind of normal now of wanting that. I was not surprised by many of the close-ended questions. I was surprised by some of the comments. I didn't expect the schools committee stuff to come up so much. I did not know previously that reverse 911 was being used as it was. That was a little bit surprising. And I was surprised by how many people were really unhappy about the fact that they perceived that the town was primarily using Facebook as the primary mechanism for communication. So those are the only things, because I know that you're not. So it was surprising to me that there were people that really didn't know how to get town news. Those are really the only things that I found surprising.
I have a question about the number, since we're talking about 250 surveys being removed because they were incomplete. Is that number in the 1,151? No.
No.
So there's 1,151 surveys analyzed as a part of this.
That's correct.
Yeah, I think one of the things you mentioned to me, and maybe I dreamt this because I wanted to, but you can
Are you
confirm it.
dreaming about the government review?
I know. Sad. Anyhow, was that the amount of the response and the amount of response in terms of putting things in the open-ended questions and the volume of responses that you got was more than normal.
It's hard to tell. The volume of responses was definitely more than normal. I would say that this team did an exceptional job of publicizing the survey. So we hit the ground running really quickly. As soon as the survey opened, I started seeing massive amounts of surveys coming in. And like the goal was only 800 and we ended at 1151. So that was surprising to me. The number of like the percentage of open-ended questions with like real information in them as a percentage of the whole, that is pretty typical of surveys. Usually residents are really eager to express something. But oftentimes, as you'll see in the comments, it's not what we asked. It's that they're annoyed about something and they want it to be known. And this is a place where they think someone is going to pay attention. So there are a lot of responses that aren't necessarily useful, but there was a very large population of people that had really good, very thorough feedback and would number it. Like they'd provide a list of really informative and thoughtful feedback. So I think that there are some really good nuggets in there that were very hard for me to express in a thematic presentation for you. So I'd really encourage you to read through them. I tried to categorize them as best I could to keep you kind of like on some kind of a roadmap, but they really do go everywhere. And I think that there's a lot to learn if you dig in closer, especially with like more government knowledge pertinent to the town than I do. So you might find things that I didn't necessarily realize were really important and informative.
Okay. Anything else? All right, Stephanie, thank you so much. We appreciate all the work that you've put into this. And I think we'll let you get on with your evening.
Great. Thank you so much, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. All right, so going to our agenda, the next is the minutes.
For the purpose of taking the vote, should we introduce ourselves so we know what she's taking notes on?
Sure. Thank you, Jack.
You also potentially skipped public comment, should there be anyone who wanted to.
I
publicly
think I
comment.
asked that.
She said that.
Did
Oh,
that,
did you?
yeah.
I guess I fell asleep.
Good morning, Russ.
She's that way.
All right, great.
Dana, we'll go around and we'll introduce ourselves. That might be helpful. Okay, Betsy Hughes,
Jack Kelly, Bill Byer,
Steve Mahoney.
Jessica Sutherland.
Corey Everett.
Catherine Bond. Megan Wojcik.
Russell Minor,
Eileen Seckler.
Matt Denaro.
Nikki Cadillac.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
okay, thank you. Okay, we have minutes to approve. Are there any comments or,
I'll be abstaining.
okay. In the lack of comments, is there a motion?
motion to accept?
Second.
Okay. Bill,
Yes.
Matt,
Abstain.
Corey,
Abstain.
Nikki,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Russ,
Yes.
Karthik is not here. Eileen?
Yes.
Jess, you're abstaining. Betsy's a yes. Okay, they pass. Seven yes. 3 abstains. Okay, thank you very much. All right, the next thing on the agenda is the subcommittee updates. So I can start, as for those of you who don't know, we get letters sent into us with comments and suggestions, et cetera, which I share with, because most of them come to me, with the group, not attributed to any person, body, or whatever, but just so that we can have the sentiment here as we go in and discuss certain things. So I did get one, which voiced, the topic was term limits. And the individual had concerns about the idea of someone who is qualified, has been duly elected, and continues to earn the support of their constituents could be deemed no longer appropriate to serve. I think our election process already provides accountability. If the community no longer wants someone to serve, they have the opportunity to elect someone else. By adopting term limits, we'd be taking that choice away from voters and replacing it with an automatic limit, even if the community continues to believe that person is the best candidate to represent them. Now, I know we're not talking about term limits at the moment, so we're going to park that for later, but that is the one written comment that I've had since our last meeting. Matt, you're up.
So past week, Russell and I made a few changes to the tracking document. Made it easier to see what sections the recommendations go to in the town charter. One thing we're going to add is a tab for everyone to go on and just put your initials next to your name, so that way we actually know this is being double, triple checked by everybody. So after I add stuff from tonight's meeting, I'll send out an email, and if you all could just go on, review it, and then go to the tab and just sign off on it, that you double checked.
And what are you looking for?
Just any mistakes, anything I missed, anything that should, any recommendation that's under the charter tab but should be in the non-charter tab. Now, I think Russell pointed a few of those out that we switched over. So just double checking and making sure we have everything documented, so that way it's easier to write the report.
There's also, I took a stab at trying to fill in a like rationale column in like very brief 1-2 sentences. Why are we leaning a particular way? I very much want all of you to check that, to be like, did you get that right? Or are you making stuff up, Russell, you madman? So that's important to check that. And the other thing that I would note is the document as it exists now is probably more accurately described as a catalog of things that have been like either explicitly called out as this is a recommendation we're going to make outside of a charter, or this is a thing that ended up in the charter. If there's a thing that did not end up in the charter, so it's like an omission, that may not be captured right now because we weren't taking notes on all that. Now, I'm probably going to be a crazy person and go through, I've already done it with the special acts, but I'll probably do it with the bylaws and be like, is everything in here accounted for or deliberately changed or omitted or whatever? But that's the one thing that would be useful if all of you go and do that madness as well. Anything that we sort of said, like no one said it because no one did it out loud and there was a vote. It's more like, oh, that didn't make it over somehow. And you only can get that by like reading the charter really in depth and reading the bylaws in depth to see, well, oh, why isn't that there? So yes, that would also be helpful if you find that.
Great. Okay, so
I'll just take that on vacation with me.
Yeah, definitely. It's like each reading, delicious.
yeah, this is so important because when we go to town meetings, select board, everybody, and say, here are the things that are in the charter that represent a change from what we do today. We want to make sure that we're not omitting anything. We're not proposing a change that that we're not calling out. So we want to be able to give a list of these are all the things that we're changing, of which there may be not very many. And then there's the other part, which is not in the charter, but we've had discussions about whether this should be a recommendation coming out of this, kind of along the way we discovered XYZ. And we want to have a list of those, which we will thoroughly discuss later as to whether there are recommendations we want to continue to make or not. But we just want to capture everything we discussed in the course of our discussions because there's been a lot. We won't want to miss anything.
One more annoying pedantic note. Should the charter go forward, we get it passed, great. There still are bylaws. And then as long as the charter does not explicitly countermand what the bylaw says, then the bylaw is still in effect for that sort of lower level thing. So the fact that something is in the bylaw and not in the charter might be perfectly correct because it should be in the bylaw and not in the charter. So it's not, it's a tricky process to say, what is language that adjusted? What is a deliberate thing? What is a thing that we intend to stay in the bylaw, which is why it's not in the charter? So think of that as you do your reviews.
But haven't we said if it's in the charter and it's contradictory to the bylaw, charter prevails?
Correct.
Yes.
If the charter has the weight of
It prevails.
special act, essentially, it's big.
So just to, I think what Rose is trying to say is that that when you go through this, there are some things we decided to leave in the bylaws because they're going to probably change, or we want to have the flexibility to have them change. I'm going to give an example. Town meeting committees is something we decided to keep in the bylaws because they may change. So they're not in the charter. That's a good example. So if you're reading through the charter and then those committees are not listed, you might say, how come they're not? That would be because there was a decision. So, but there are other things that you may look at, because every time I look at it, I come up with something else and say, holy cow, this should be in the charter, it shouldn't be in the bylaw, and we need to talk about it, so you're going to come up with those kinds of things as well. So we just want to make sure we get all of those documented.
It's noticeable when you look at something like maybe the definition of a power or a structure, and then when you look, the language will be very similar because the Collins Center did a good job of assimilating this information and making charter language. But then maybe you'll notice, there might be a thing, a clause, a meaning that is a little different. And you're like, is that deliberate or not deliberate? That's the thing I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Is to try to make sure we're not missing anything like that. That's right. I saw the eyebrow. You're right. It hurts your head. Do enjoy.
Right. Now, of course, we did things like eliminated we made it gender neutral. We're not going to go through and identify all that kind of stuff. So let's make sure we're using some sense of reasonableness as you go through this. And so this is an important sub-project, I would say, for everybody on the committee to do. Because you're all going to approach it differently, and I think we need everybody's perspective as you go through that.
Matt has a document online on Google Docs. You can email him for permission to edit or send.
I
notes.
think, I'm going to have Matt, when you said you're going to update it after this meeting.
Yes.
I'm going to have him send it out to the committee directly.
But as editable form online or just as a static document?
I think it needs to be so people can put in comments and,
You can
suggest.
put in comments as it is now.
Yeah.
In terms of getting people to sign off that they reviewed it, you will have to have editing access.
Okay,
But I'll make a copy of it so that way, in case anyone hits anything by mistake, nothing gets messed up.
I'm going to leave the Google Docs to you because
All right.
that is, my head explodes. That's not my thing.
I'm with you on that.
Okay.
If you don't feel comfortable, you can send a list to an individual and we'll make sure your comments get in.
I'm good. I just can't explain it, that's all. Okay. Nikki.
All right, been working on the report, friends.
Gosh.
It's in, I would say, in pretty good shape. It is not as daunting as it may seem as we've been talking about it for the last year. It is probably about 5 pages long without appendices. Like it's not bad. It's really not. It's in good enough shape that we're going to send it to our editing committee. So I think it was Steve, Jack, and Russell. So we're gonna send it to you all probably tonight or tomorrow, so because we meet again next Tuesday. And we would love your thoughts, editors. But what we tried to do was really keep it very straightforward, very readable, I tried to take away some redundancies and make sure that it is just very clear what we did, why we did it, how we did it, and what we came up with. And then the big work, the charter and the survey and the stakeholder input and all of that will just go on as appendices at the end.
One thing that came out of this is, Nikki, she did the hard part, which is, putting the first draft down is really, to me, the hardest part of the whole project. And then she and I went through it. And as we were going through it, it occurred to me that this is such a clear communication piece that we probably should use it as we start to talk to town meeting members and others about this project, because it's 5 pages long. It's easy to understand. It distills 13 months of work down into 5 pages in a logical and a way that makes some sense. And I haven't quite put it together yet, and that will be my next comment. But I think it's really in a good place, and I think that we can use this document for more than one purpose, which was my aha moment when we were talking about it. So
Does it contain footnotes?
Yeah.
It's all text.
All text, there are comments. So when you get it, it will look like this and we'll have comments on the side.
Eventually, they're gonna be gone.
Eventually, they're going to be gone. These are really conversations between me and Betsy thinking about do we want to socialize this ahead of putting it, finalizing it and putting it towards the select board and, questions about how to word certain things or whatever. There's not a ton of comments. There's probably 4 or 5 total.
is there another word for things?
Yeah.
Word for things.
And other things like that.
In the absence of footnotes, will you say see appendix A in the text or not?
Like a hyperlink, that's what I was thinking too, Jack,
Yeah.
like a hyperlink to that page, that place,
It
a lot of
should-
documents where they.
That
wants
should
to know more
be,
and-
yeah, that should be very doable in Word doc once we get to that point, yeah.
I haven't seen anything. I'm hoping that there's sort of a 2 things this does. The briefness of the report so we can give it to people and they can digest it and
Yeah.
cool. But I'm hoping also, and we heard from some folks around, ensuring that we capture all of the work for posterity in the sense of, obviously we're gonna have appendixes of these big things. I'm hoping things like the presentations you've been giving to 1,000 committees, throw that sucker in there. Like,
Yeah.
take everything that we can have that's of any documentation and just get it all in the appendices. It's not meant for people to read it, but that way, in 15 years, when someone looks back and go, what did they do, or why did they reach that? Like,
I think
hoping
there are
it's in there.
two different purposes here, and I think
Yeah.
focus is our friend here. So I think, great idea, Russ. I think we should have documents that will live on in posterity, because as we know, there will be more government review
Yes.
committees in the future, right?
And they'll be like, what are we doing?
Yeah,
Yes,
right. And
yes.
so we'll maintain a library, I think, of things that we have that would be helpful to future committees. But what we don't want to do is overwhelm our target audience with so much volume of stuff that they don't even give it a chance. So it's a delicate balance, but I think let's keep focused now on what's the prize for now,
All
right?
right, let me ask this then. Can we at least make a repository that all of us have access to?
Yeah.
That maybe isn't part of the report, because I agree, it's about communicating, but is like the place where we can just start putting everything.
Well, I think that the website does that job. And as long as we can keep the website and perhaps, because it does, we do reference the website in here, we hyperlink to the website. But perhaps we need a more versatile permalink that's not /gov review.
I also think, look, I give the website really like 5 out of 10, which is
Maybe.
great.
Maybe,
But
but it's a repository for all the documentation, so.
And we did
Some.
determine early on it was our source of truth.
Then I'm cool if that is the place, then maybe there's more I can suggest we add.
So
to
like
that.
the scrapbook
So-
of things.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, like an
I think-
example being the presentation you gave to
Bible.
committees,
Yeah.
that's a good snapshot that will not live on because we're done, we will have done that job, but it will be useful in the future for someone to look back and go, what were they doing? How were they communicating? Like, that's valuable, but not in a report, so.
And you add that to the timeline that's existing, make that, add links there, say, this is what we thought at this point, this is what we're working on at this point, and link it that way.
If the committee is cool with this concept, I'll take it offline and figure out how do we find a place to put things that are smaller maybe than the report needs, but are useful for posterity.
Does anybody object to Russ taking that on?
But I just own that. Great, you know what? Great, love it.
So the just general structure, just so people have a sense of it. So there's an introduction with committee members and an executive summary. There's a mission, why and how, essentially. Why do we need a charter? Why are we proposing a charter? How a town adopts a charter, and then our methodology. So the timeline, the process, how we went about gathering public input. Then we go into recommendations for the new charter. Then we go into non-charter recommendations, where we feed all of these other things into, and then we go into the appendices. So it really is sort of a linear presentation of the work that we've done, but also thematically presented in a way that hopefully when you see it, you'll be like, yeah, this is really easy to read and makes sense.
Is there something in there about the impact on the bylaws, for instance?
Same word.
How does it affect the bylaws? How are you changing them, and what does that mean for?
Yeah, so I mean, since we're not changing any bylaws, we're really suggesting changes.
Well, they're gonna have to
right?
change them. Yeah.
So,
It seems to me that's probably after the committee is over, there's a step that says there needs to be a process that goes through.
Transition.
That
Transition thing, yeah.
that goes through the bylaws and says, okay, the following bylaws can go away and some of these need to be changed a bit. And that there's a follow-on committee that's going to be taking a look at those kinds of things. So I think we'd identify that there's a follow-on project that
So we'll do
needs to
that in the
happen.
report, in this.
I think it should be in the report, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think it's also going to be
rolling to two.
a little bit in the transition part of the charter itself.
Yep.
Yeah.
And because we haven't done that yet, I'm being a little bit fuzzy on that
Yeah.
because I'm not exactly sure what that's gonna look like until we get there. But
Okay.
it'll either be there or it'll be in the report, but it will be,
Because that's important.
it'll be teed up.
Yeah, so here's the language that we currently have, just so you have it in your mind. Recommendations that involve more day-to-day operational detail that the BGRC believes should remain flexible or that require further study belong instead in bylaw changes or topics for continued review. Any further review will be at the discretion of the relevant body. So it does identify that there are going to need to be changes or further investigations. But
Awareness that something has to happen.
right, exactly. But like, it also says, literally the sentence says, with the submission of this report, the work of the BGRC is concluded.
All right. We're done with it.
I think the phrase I've been using is that after town meeting and their approval, the shelf life of this committee has expired.
Yeah.
So, I think we're all aiming for getting ourselves through to that point and getting it approved. I mean, that is, without question, what we are going to do. Okay, great. The one other thing is that there's going to have to be another subcommittee, and this will be the last, that will be about, and I don't know what the right word for it is, and, so we need to come up with something, but for the lack of a better word, it's kind of implementation. So there is a process that we need to go through, which is is a lot of communications, where we get people on board with what we're doing, that we answer questions in advance of town meeting, that we have people prepared to vote. I guess that's kind of like what would it take to prepare town meeting to be educated on what's going on and be prepared to vote on this charter? And for example, one of the things that occurred to me is that we need to have meetings with every town meeting member, and the best way to do that is probably around precinct meetings, and that we would have 7 precinct meetings. And then if somebody can't attend one because they're busy that night, they can go to somebody else's precinct meeting.
Sounds like a public relations campaign.
That and a sales campaign and a technical communications campaign. I mean, it's like all of that. Like, how do we roll this out now to the different audiences that we need to prepare in order to help them make the decision? So that's going to be another committee that is going to I'm going to need some help with.
One small question on that is, as we've seen, the more we engage with people, the more that they dive into it, they have thoughts and opinions. We will be at a point where the things will have been pretty far along at that point. Again, it's not over. Don't have to answer it now, but I'm interested in how we can at least have the idea of how we might accommodate some of that feedback that late in the process, and at least if it's something large enough to be, that's obviously a concern to people.
So you're saying, how do we defend our decisions that are selling?
Either that, or how do we
layers.
Right.
How do you also take input from someone who didn't get involved until now, and now they're into it? And by the way, they're a voting member, and it's going to happen. So let's be upfront about
Right.
it.
So this is part of what this committee is going to have to think about. In my opinion, we are all about getting to yes. All about getting to yes right now. And I think Karthik said this, like, discretion is the better part of valor on some things. We've done a lot of work, and this charter is important for our town. And I think we've all put a lot into that. If we find in the course of going through these meetings that there is a topic that is going to kill the whole thing,
Poison pill.
then we as a committee have to meet and say, is it worth it?
Yeah.
Right? So there's always got to be that, we said it was iterative. It's going to continue to be iterative, I think, up until the point where we legally can't change anything, which is probably the day of town meeting.
I guess maybe that's kind of maybe what I'm asking or trying to figure out, like, assuming we are still meeting as we have this other part, is it after we present to the select board? Is it
Could be.
just before we go? Like, at some moment it becomes, I guess, a warrant article, and I suppose that's probably the end of the road right there.
But
So-
Or at least-
a warrant article is amendable.
Yeah.
Right, that's true. Okay, yeah.
So the plan is, and in talking to this about, I haven't talked to select boards directly at this point, but I have had conversations with Patrick and John, that we're not going to ask the select board to actually vote on it until, not the September meeting. We're gonna ask them to support it. And if there are any issues, we want to understand that. But to have the final vote on it, what, you're shaking your head, no? What?
This is, we are the select board's committee.
Right.
We need to go to the select board and it needs to go through them.
Oh, I agree. I'm not saying it doesn't.
Before it goes to town meeting, the select board has to vote.
Okay, so let me, I didn't articulate that correctly. Let me try this again. Originally, we were gonna go to town meeting, to select board in September and ask them to vote on this. Once they vote, they voted. It occurred to us that as we're doing these town meeting briefings, we may find there are issues that come up, just what Russ said, that could kill the whole thing. And the committee is gonna wanna say, you know what, let's take this provision out of the charter because it's gonna kill the whole thing. So, and then we do, and then, so what the discussion I had with them was, they're not gonna do their formal vote, which would be presented at town meeting in September. They will do the formal vote in like late November or December, after we've had all these meetings, so that we can find out whether are any issues that are going to that be a problem for us in getting the charter approved. Does that make more sense?
Yes.
So they're gonna vote, Bill. I'm not saying they're not voting. They are gonna vote. It's just maybe September was too early because we will not have a chance. August is dead. I mean, everybody's away in August, and trying to pull people together for meetings is just not a viable thing. So
I would think when you go to town meeting members, they're gonna wanna know if the select board has approved this.
I think that's why we go and ask the select board for their what's this, support, there's like a endorsement of whatever word you can use that is not a vote, to give an indication that yes, they're on board with it.
Have no objection.
And then they will,
No, I have no objection, it's not good enough.
and then they will still share their vote at town meeting on the floor.
But well, of course, for the final one,
Yeah.
but when we go to talk to people, we're gonna say, yeah, but the select board hasn't voted on it, really. They haven't really approved it. Yeah, they're in favor of it,
Jess?
But for that reason of, if they vote for it, then that's also providing the signal to town meeting members that we can't, that it would be hard to make modifications versus the message is, we've gotten a select board, we've gotten their feedback, we've gotten general consensus support, whatever, without an official vote. We wanted to leave this open to hear from town meeting members that if anything needs to be incorporated, it can, and then we go back for that final vote for select board. It's showing we clearly want to go through all of the conversations before having that final piece presented to the select board.
Yeah.
That was kind of my question, you clarified it. So it's going to, you'll go to select board and get their general consensus. Then you go to town meeting and present, your 5-page and some of the other stuff.
It won't be
And then
town
let
meeting.
town
No, it's not town meeting, no.
So that's what I'm trying to, I think that's where I'm looking
Okay.
for clarification too, because if you're looking for feedback, are you going to get feedback from town meeting and then go back and say,
No, no, no,
is
no.
something town meeting doesn't like, it's gonna kill it too?
No. Here's the way it's gonna go is that we've got select board meeting in September, town meeting in January. Town meeting is voting yes or no, up or down, period, the end. That's what they're,
In January.
in January.
That's what I want to clarify.
Yes,
Okay.
100%, not even debatable. That's what they're doing. In September, the select board, we're gonna go to them and say, we want your support for this as we have it. Whatever word carries the most weight that it doesn't involve the word vote. And then, because we will be continuing to talk to town meeting members.
So because we're going to have precinct meetings in between September and November.
Right.
Right, so we're gonna
Yeah.
schedule 7 meetings. Anybody in each precinct can go to any of those 7 meetings and the same information will be presented and we'll just be asking for feedback. Like,
Right.
here's the draft report, here are the recommendations.
I think it's gonna be, we present is gonna be, we'll figure that one out.
It'll be
but
the report with an accompanying
Maybe,
presentation.
it may not be as complex as that.
All right.
Okay, you're now engaged in the subcommittee discussions, and which obviously you guys really are excited about. So I'm waiting for who would like to volunteer for that particular subcommittee to,
I'll go in.
okay. Okay, it's gonna be real work. Make sure you can do it if you have the time. Okay,
Not even show it.
Experienced phone banker right here.
Not volunteering, but I have a question. So if the select board is going to have a discussion, it sounds like, about the charter in
so they've
September.
already had one couple, but yes, it's
Okay,
gonna
so
be
we're gonna have,
final.
they're gonna have another discussion.
Yep.
We're gonna ask their general support, their feedback. And then before January town meeting, will the select board have that formal vote?
Yes,
Yes.
I think that's the piece that's missing.
yeah. The formal vote would happen in late November, early December. There will be a formal vote before we get into town meeting in January.
Okay. How many discussions have you guys already had with this?
Once.
One, I don't know.
Other than the kickoff meeting?
They wanted to be hands off. They don't want to look like they're controlling it.
Oh, of course, yeah. I'm just wondering.
So the initial meeting, which was a year ago in June.
Was there one update?
I don't know.
No, I think the first time we've engaged them directly was this past week or two when we were visiting everybody and giving all the updates.
Yes, we have not, nor have they participated in any of the meetings. So this is, it was a,
Oh, I remember what I was thinking is when you were presenting ahead of town meeting, because we were asking for survey money, you didn't speak with the select board at that. That's true. I'm just like, well, I know you were there before.
yeah,
We went from
in
month
town
to
meeting
month.
as well.
That was the survey money.
Yeah.
Survey money. Yes. Okay, so there is, I've got two volunteers.
And there, to be clear, these two are volunteering to host precinct meetings.
No, to be on the committee to think about what this is gonna look like. And I'm gonna draft some people too, so I'm just warning you. Okay,
Voluntold.
huh?
Voluntold.
Yeah, this is really important, this one, because we need to figure this out. Just look at the confusion that happened with my people trying to explain what we're trying to do. And, we will be doing, presentations, probably, I don't even know what they're gonna look like. I won't even hazard a guess, but I think the ones that we've been doing for the boards and committees have gone pretty well in terms of getting people's attention and bringing people up to date. We have two people who are just part of that, so obviously we take somebody's attention. Anyhow, more about that later. I just wanted to get a sense from people, and I appreciate anybody who can join us. Great. So the next thing on the agenda is last time we got together, we talked about recall, and we were supposed to talk about elections and recall. And as you recall, the Collins Center sent out their discussion guides on election and recall.
Isn't it actually financial and fiscal procedures? Or are you skipping that?
No, if you look at the agenda, we are, yeah, we're gonna,
Stanson, got it.
we're gonna go and try to finish off a couple of things we started first, that.
Yep.
So, and I'm going to share.
Is that the July 13th?
It is it's dated July 23rd was the update. They just sent I sent out to you, but it's, the election portion is pretty much the same.
Okay.
And I'm trying to, I do not have the ability to share apparently.
Thank you.
But if that's on, you don't.
So, well, there's patches, so I need to do it.
Thank you.
The memo?
He's controlling everything. Okay, let's see if I do that. Okay, so it looks at elections 7.1. The memo that they sent out on the 13th is exactly the same wording as what she sent out. Is that what it is? It looks like that.
That's the one with
April 11th, I have one, and it talks about annual elections, section 7.
Oh, not what came out in the past couple of weeks.
Well, this was also part of the ones that she sent out on the 23rd, but it hasn't changed since our last meeting. 'Cause we
Except
never talked about
her
it.
comments at
On
the
the
top.
23rd is term limits.
Yes, there are two on the 23rd, term limits and recall. It's draft 7 and 8 for discussion is the subject line
Yep.
on that.
Okay, that's
Okay.
good.
So if you go to the second page of that one, you will find elections.
There's also her notes where her major comment in there, if I may paraphrase, is that we had our discussion.
On
And-
recall.
Yes,
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that right now. I want to talk about elections. Page 2.
got it.
Okay, we're going to talk about recall in its entirety
Oh, I see. Yeah,
after, okay?
my apologies.
All right, that's okay. We all on the same page here? You're literally, okay. So this section, I want to review, it talks about the annual elections, and see if people have any comments on this. I had a couple, but I'd like to hear from other people too.
On 7.1, does town meeting have any say on when the election date is?
Uh,
Because it's strictly a selected choice.
Like a select board choice.
Yes.
Well, it's really not even select board choice. The town clerk just goes to the select board for approval.
Right.
And so here's when the election's gonna be.
I
Bylaw
chatted,
that it's the
huh?
second Saturday or whatever, and
One of the things that I suggested, Ed, is that maybe, again, because this is supposed to help people understand what we do, is that rather than held on a date to be determined by the town bylaws, that we say be held in April, and then some general language that allows it so that the select board has the flexibility should an April not be viable because of a holiday? Should there be another pandemic? I mean, whatever, so that there's some wiggle room in there if the, I asked her about that. She said that the committee can choose to specify the month in the charter for annual elections. The committee can remove the reference to the bylaws and have the select board determine the date if it chooses. So I guess the question there is, do we ask her to go back and put in April with some language that allows some flexibility to the select board? Should there be some sort of extenuating circumstance? Nikki?
I would say that we've had two sets of extenuating circumstances in the last 6 years, and both have been handled by the way we do it currently. I sort of like it the way it is because the fact that the election is in the spring is state statute.
Yes.
And currently during, according to the bylaws, there is some bylaw about, I haven't read it lately, but something about a Saturday in April. And I think it's usually first Saturday, but this year we're gonna do the second Saturday or something like that.
second Saturday.
There was something, but this year, we had to move it a little bit because there was Easter and there were other high holidays and there was other stuff that was going on at the same time. So anyway, what I'm saying is there was a pandemic and there was a holiday and special circumstances, and the town clerk and the select board managed it just fine. So I think that the way it's been done has been working.
And my question is, one of the things that I thought we were trying to do is stop people from having to
Going
back to the bylaws. If that's part of it, and there's no reason why we couldn't put April in here, or we could put in, as long as you have the language, say, or another date as determined by the select board or something. Just that kind of wiggle room, just so people don't have to say, oh, okay, wait, no, now I gotta go back to the bylaws. What is, it's cumbersome and it seems counter what we're trying to.
If someone wants to know when the date of the election is, are they gonna go to the charter?
Well, if people are reading the charter, we're saying you can get everything in one.
Well, we shouldn't say that.
Well, not everything. We're getting a lot of stuff in one place.
Exactly.
The election is in April. And it is changed as needed. by designation by the select board. So I guess I don't see a reason not to put April in there. I just don't know if it's compelling enough to put April for me. A little ambivalent, I guess.
Any feelings, people? Yes,
On that.
I don't see the downside of putting it in there.
This election section.
just finish then you start. Okay.
I don't see the downside in putting it in there, especially given that we are trying to have the governing overview of elections in this section.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
On 7.3, it says no designation whatsoever. Are we excluding the word incumbent after the candidate's name?
Okay, so that's a different, can we just hold that for 1 minute and finish
It's in the
this?
section called elections.
I know, we're on 7.1.
Okay.
Any other feelings about?
It can't hurt.
Okay.
I mean, I don't find it compelling. Just like we said,
something in that may have to be changed. Yeah, unless.
Motion and see how people feel. Make a motion and see how people feel.
Okay, I make a motion that we add the language, April or other date is designated by the select board, or the words that Collins Center deems more appropriate than those, in section 7.1.
Second?
Strike as determined by the town bylaws.
Yep.
I think, can I clarify your motion a little? You're saying you would like to ask the Collins Center to include language and they will come back with another piece of language that will be more specific.
I want to be very specific about what we're asking them.
Yep.
So I want to be more
That's fine. Yeah, I
specific than
gotcha.
that, yeah.
I just want to make sure you're trying to describe what's stricken and what's not. I'm like, wait till they give you the actual language. The motion is to have them go write that.
But to
Replace. Determined by the
replace
town.
this with that
Yep.
is, so it's pretty specific.
Okay.
So people understand what the motion is, okay. Okay, Bill,
No.
Matt,
No.
Corey,
Yes.
Nikki?
Maybe is not accepted.
I know, I'm gonna say yes.
Yeah.
I mean, really, 155149.
Yeah. No.
Steve,
No.
Russ,
No.
Eileen,
Yes.
Jess?
Yes.
That's a yes. Oh, my. Wow, this is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, no. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, yes, so it loses. Okay, we'll keep it as is. Okay. Anything in 7.2? 7.3,
7.2, the town clerk and board of registrars. I think, or their designees.
Is that not encompassed by together with such assistant registrars as may be required and regularly designated?
Well, assistant registrars, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
We have the board of registrars, we have the town clerk, I don't know who the assistant registrars are.
okay, or their designees.
Could replace that whole clause.
So we're striking together with such assistant registrars and adding or their designees, Jack? Separate?
You can have both in there.
Then it makes it more complicated.
Yeah, I think,
I think or their designees does the job of that.
I just, yeah,
okay. So
don't want
then
to lock it in too tight to one thing.
the town clerk and board of registrars or their designees, as may be required and regularly designated, shall conduct.
I was gonna strike the whole thing in between the two commas, but maybe
Okay,
that as may be
which would
required.
be what?
So it would read, the town clerk and board of registrars or their designees shall conduct. I don't know if that's
Okay.
not too,
I think that's getting a little.
Is it together with their designees? Or is it or?
together with their designations makes sense.
There's three categories of people who shall conduct and supervise. I think that's,
Because it can't be or, because if you say the town clerk and board of registrars or their designees, that's saying just the designees to do it if they want to.
Yeah.
So it's together with their designees shall conduct and supervise all local elections in accordance with Mass General laws.
That sounds good. You have to
Does-
tell us if
the
it's wrong.
designee include poll workers.
I would just say probably.
Say so.
Probably, but I don't know if the charter needs to necessarily say that.
No, I think we just leave designees as a general term.
Yeah,
Okay.
Turn your camera
Covered
on.
by Mass General Law somewhere.
turn your camera on.
Oh, God, yes. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so the wording for 7.2 as proposed is that the town clerk and board of registrars, together with their designees, shall conduct and supervise all local elections in accordance with the Mass General laws and with local laws that are not inconsistent with state law.
It's great. And if the Collins Center has feedback on it, they'll just.
I don't think they will. Okay, so 7.2, do I have a motion? So moved. Second?
Second.
Okay, Bill,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Vicky,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Russ,
Yes.
Eileen,
Yes.
Jess,
Yes.
me, yes. Okay, that's everybody, 10. All right, that's a go. 7.3, nonpartisan.
Betsy, can I just clarify for the motion prior, what was the number for the vote?
4, yes, 5, no.
It wasn't 5 and 5.
It was not passed. Okay. 7.3, nonpartisan elections.
Wait, we do have 10 people.
Oh, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, we have
I think it was 5 and 5.
In which case it fails.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, 5 and 5, sorry. Fails.
What was it?
5 and 5. Fails.
Fails.
Thank you. Good question. 7.3, nonpartisan elections.
I
Jackie?
just have the, or does it, what? Shall be printed without any party, like emblem or designation, so without any designation means they don't put the word incumbent in there.
No, it's saying without any party designation.
That's the way I read it too, but it is not clear.
Should we say party designation then?
Then you would say without any party mark, party emblem, or party designation whatsoever. You'd have to put party against each one.
Oh,
Mark,
party
emblem,
is
and
right there.
designation apply, all three apply to party.
Yeah.
But grammatically, it's confusing. I'm just acknowledging that. I don't really have a suggestion. I'm trying to wordsmith it, but because it could say party mark, emblem, or designation, or it could say party mark, emblem, or designation. That's
Say party designation.
Right. That would be better.
I think it would
Yeah.
clear it up.
Okay. So if we add party before the designation, so it would read, shall be printed without any party mark, emblem, or party designation whatsoever.
I would suggest just party, shall be printed without any party designation whatsoever.
So just
True.
remove mark, emblem, or.
Well, we have to ask if a designation can satisfy the definition of mark or emblem. Designation might be written versus,
Like a logo
Yeah.
or something like that, which might be.
yeah, like a
Could be
donkey
different.
or. What's it on?
Yeah.
Elephant.
Elephant.
Designation. Okay, this guy's a such and such, I don't know.
Or plate. Yeah,
I think we
without
just
any
need
reference to
concept.
party would be the way I would reword it, but again, like, I don't know legally what makes sense or like what the definitions are of.
Basically, we need it to be clarified. However, that can be clarified where we don't negate something that is not written or a picture.
What do we print?
When you say whether or not they can put the
Well,
word
but this is what it's
incompetent.
saying. It's saying that. It's saying like in the future, there shall never be any type of party thing.
Designation, yeah.
I mean, you
Jack,
could
it doesn't
almost
say
say the
anywhere.
words mark, emblem, or designation of
That's a party topic. That's a different, we do need
end
to deal
of
with that.
sentence with the party.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion, Catherine.
I think here, let's just,
Say what you said again, Catherine?
You could say that printed without any mark, emblem, or designation of a party, any party. You can put the party at the end.
mark, emblem, or designation of a party.
I mean,
That would capture it all. Yeah.
Okay, so here's how it reads. Elections in the office shall be nonpartisan, and election ballots for town officers shall be printed without any mark, emblem, or designation of a party whatsoever. Okay, do I have a second on that? Second. Okay. Bill,
yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Nikki?
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Russ,
Yes.
Eileen?
Yes.
Jess?
Yes.
Me, yes, okay. Rule 10, okay. Placement of names on the ballot.
Now, presently, incumbents go first, then others.
That's right.
Yeah.
This is changing that.
Yeah.
But it's going to allow the word incumbent after the name.
That's covered in a different portion of the charter, which
It is.
is.
Well,
Like a year ago, just
that was for town meeting members, so that,
Oh, I see.
and we decided to use the same language for town meeting
Yeah.
that we used for town meeting for elected
Yeah.
officers. So, I think we need to put in here something about, what do we do on?
If you look in, well, the last version of the charter, that language is in 2.4
Yeah.
of Article 2, I think. So that's the candidate for reelection language. Just put against the candidate's name as it appears on the ballot. So yeah, if this is going to apply to also non-town meeting members. then
Okay,
it's like a whole-
here from October 14th, 2025. Recommendations for charter, apply this to all candidates and therefore moved to election section. So we actually did say when we reviewed this for town meeting, it should be moved to the election section, and it reads, the placement of the names of all candidates on the ballot for election shall be established by a public drawing of lots by the town clerk.
And that is what is here.
Yeah.
And so, but it doesn't say anything about the word incumbent.
No.
So if we want to add it to that, then we should add it to this wording. Is it currently on the ballot?
Bylaws anywhere.
Yeah,
I
that's
know it's
what I'm
currently on the ballot. I'm just wondering if it's in the bylaws.
Incumbents are always, presently, incumbents are first, and then
So I see
I'm
town
gonna do
meeting
this
member
with you.
incumbency is referred to. I'm searching for the word incumbent, which may be not sufficient here, but
Well, I also searched for election and I don't see anything in there.
Originally, I had suggested this change because I felt by listing all the incumbents first, they were receiving an unfair advantage.
Yep.
So I would like to preserve that intent if everyone agrees.
Yeah, no, I think we already voted when we did that.
Yeah,
The
it's,
question is, do we put something after their name saying that they're incumbent? They may be at the bottom of the list, but should we give an indication that they're incumbent or not?
Absolutely.
So that is the question, and if so, we should add.
live.
yeah, where,
I can't
Yeah.
find it in any of our notes.
so the question is, how did that come about now?
Yeah, why does it exist now? Is it a state law? Is it in, I'm gonna look at MGL while other people search.
State law, because it's found every ballot I've seen, state or local.
It seems to me I looked at this for some reason, and I ended up finding it in state law.
All right, I'm looking. Y'all continue your conversation.
Okay, so let's go by our intent. Do we want it to be our intent that an incumbent have the name, have incumbent following their name on the ballot?
Yes, because we've had occasion, not necessarily in town, but where someone with the same identical name chooses to run and confuse the voters.
Alaska. 3 Dan Sullivans.
Okay, so then I think the recommendation that we would vote on is for Pat to add incumbents into this.
That's something that we don't put there.
That we do add,
Okay, that
where they're located on the ballot is done by lot.
right.
But following their name, it would list.
Yes.
It's in the special act, candidate for reelection.
Thank you. That was
knew
the
I saw
next place I was gonna look. Which special act, the original one?
Yeah. An act establishing representative town meeting form of government in the town of Burlington.
Okay.
And
And
it's right under, it's like 2 paragraphs under the placement of all names that shall be drawn by lots.
But careful, the language gets altered in amendments, so you can be fooled as I was. So,
Does it,
So
but
which
good to know it's there, but it-
But no, this is a special act.
right, but there are
There's amendments
like
to that
15
special
other special acts that amend this and that and this. And so I've already fallen into the trap that I.
Steve, which special act was that? Just so.
The town meeting,
It's the original.
the original one.
and it says, what's the actual language about incumbents on that? I'm sorry.
It doesn't say incumbents, it says, it uses, if a town meeting member is a candidate for reelection, the words candidate for reelection
That's
are
true.
defended against this.
This is
name.
an
So this is,
MDL.
right, but this is, so I concur with you on everything you read there. And that's talking about town meeting members.
Yeah.
It's not talking about people who are not town meeting members.
But under Mass General Law, Section 41, to the name of each candidate for a town office upon an official ballot who is an elected incumbent thereof shall be added the words candidate for reelection.
Where is that?
MGL, Section 41.
Takes care of that question.
MGL, Chapter 54, Section 41.
Thank you. Yeah, okay.
Chapter,
54, section 41.
so we should add the language from there to this. So that's what we're
The
saying,
name
right?
of the candidate, yeah, for a state or city office. I'm sorry, I was reading what you just read. I just, you see it.
Okay, so our request to Pat is to add the language about incumbents to this section.
Candidate for reelection. Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you can just reference the state law, because the state law changes.
No.
You said section 41?
Section 54.
Chapter 54, Section 41.
And there's nothing there about alphabetical order.
No.
There's nothing there about.
No,
being in
no, it's gonna be done by lot. Yep. Okay, so the proposal is that we ask the Collins Center to add language from chapter 54, section 41 about candidate for reelection to this section. Is there a second on that?
Second.
4? Okay, Bill?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
Nikki?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Russ?
Yes.
Eileen?
Yep.
Jess?
Yes.
Betsy, yes. Okay, good. All right. 7-5 swearing in of officers. Any comments about that? For the big board and me? Okay, we're good there. All right, we're done with elections. Thank you very much. Okay, goes back to Pat. Now recall. So now we'll go back to the front page of this. This came up because in the course of doing the briefing sessions, it was mentioned that the bar that we were proposing in terms of the percentages was was so high that it actually is saying you really don't have a recall provision, even though you do have a recall provision,
Yeah.
and not in the spirit of the 80% who favor the recall provision. So I asked the Collins Senate to kind of take a look at what we had proposed in terms of all the criteria and tell us whether anything was out of whack with, based on their experience in other charters. So that's where this came from and why we're looking at that. You can read for yourself. The one choice that we made that they thought was a little out of whack was the 30% of registered voters in order to recall an elected official.
That was a compromise because we said that a certain percentage had to vote in favor of the recall. This is saying just a certain percentage have to vote.
Correct.
So this was already a compromise.
Well, I think we were going back and forth between, because if you look at the chart down here about how many people actually vote in local elections.
That's that is a bad reference for this. It has no bearing on a recall petition.
Right, but it just gives a frame of reference in terms of when there are things that, it gives how many people come to vote. That's all it's doing, whether, at different elections. And some of these, I don't even remember what was going on in 24 that we got.
There was a contested select board election.
Okay.
Quite a few contested elections.
There were a lot,
Yeah.
yeah. Another thing to think about, and I mentioned this before, is that the percentages don't really capture necessarily what's going on with the raw number of people who are turning out as a percentage of the population, or even as a percentage of registered voters, because some of these percentages are calculated differently than others. And I'm not going to get into the weeds about it, but that's just the case. So, we went up from, I think it was about 2,800 voters in 22-23 to closer to 3,800 in 24 and maybe 500 in 25. The raw numbers really tell a better story than these percentages because they're not calculated based on the same denominator.
So we have we actually have the raw numbers for 2025 in this. Again, it just gives you an idea of what it would take in order to have that go through. So in 2025, 30% would be 5,809. A lot.
Yeah.
And how many voted in the?
Checking right now.
Which one?
In the recall, in the special election?
Yeah.
It was 36%, so it's about 5,000. I'm going to check the numbers up for you.
The special election?
Yeah.
A recall might be a special election.
It probably will be.
Unless it's within 100 days of election, it will be a special election. Right. So I think the special election for the high school is an appropriate benchmark to use.
It's got to be egregious enough.
Yeah.
To do this.
I agree with that.
Steve, why don't you comment?
That was about raising taxes that was going to hit everyone in town. Not everyone pays attention to town government.
Well, what are the reasons you're going to use to recall someone?
Some issue of malfeasance or something that people paying attention would know about, but the people who are not paying attention, who aren't really interested in town government, would not.
I disagree.
The campaign should do that.
I disagree strongly with that.
Okay.
Is that it has to be something out there, not necessarily with his duties, probably not related to his duties, unless he embezzles money. That would be a reason for recall. If you don't like what he's doing, you vote against him in the next election. You don't use this as a method to recall, to get at him. Recall's got to be for something really, really egregious, not just you don't like what he's doing.
Not suggesting you don't like what he's doing, but not everyone pays attention, is my point.
Well,
but the tax bill was going to hit everyone. So everyone was paying attention to that, or a much higher percentage than would normally.
if it's egregious enough, you don't think people will be paying attention?
No.
Well, I think you're wrong on that one.
Maybe.
I think, yeah, a Burlington residents page will be lit up.
Yeah, but people already said they hate Facebook.
Right.
7,117 ballots, which were 36% of registered voters. Thank you, BCAT. I did not have those numbers, but BCAT did.
Okay, so the question is, if you take a look at what we went through and how they wrote it up, do we want to stick with that high percentage? If you read through it, the affidavit, we said it needed to be 2% of registered vote for the affidavit, including 25 voters from each of the precincts. That's just for the affidavit.
Yeah, that's easy enough to get an affidavit.
Yeah.
It's only a little bit more difficult to get it on the ballot.
And then
It's going to be difficult to.
and the ballot is
20%.
20% for the ballot.
Signatures, that's how many signatures we would need.
Yeah, that's,
I can say as someone who has like collected signatures for many different candidates, that number is practically impossible. Like going door to door, you might get a few signatures an hour of canvassing. So it does already preclude the possibility of a recall election for someone whose vote you don't like. Because, people are going to ask like, okay, what did he do? Why are you here? And if you say, oh, he voted this way on this thing, they might say, oh, I like that, get out. So I feel like the threshold is by necessity going to be they robbed a bank or something, which is pretty universally agreed to be, something you want someone out of office a little early for. So I would just say that, even getting 10% of, I think the number should be 10% of anything of registered voters' signatures to trigger, that kind of recall election on the ballot, which would still be extraordinarily high. There need to be a lot of motivated people knocking a lot of doors to get that number in practice. But, I do agree that it should be about they do something that is objectively wrong, not just, they don't do something the way you like.
Just to make sure we're keeping things clear, a minute ago, the discussion around the percentage is about the voter turnout during the vote of the recall. And what you're discussing is the relative percentage required on the petition to move to the next thing. Just make sure everybody's clear.
so if we go back to what other towns do, remember the chart? To this particular point, on the number of voter signatures to compel an election. And unfortunately, the headers don't.
To compel election or to compel the recall?
No, to compel the election, which is what we're talking about now. One town was 10%, not more than 25% in one district. Another was 20%. The next one was 20%. The other was 10%, and one was 15%, not more than 25% from any one district. So it was obviously, and that's the petition to get it on the ballot.
And so,
If I may speak on this, we debated this thing for quite a long time. So just because the Collins Center says, well, this might be too hard, well, because other towns have it lower. I don't care what other towns are doing.
I don't care what Collins says.
We had a significant debate, and now we're reopening it just because the Collins Center said no.
What I said in the beginning is that I initiated this because of the reaction I got in some of the board and committee meetings that we've been conducting, that they felt that the 30% was too high because it basically said, oh, we don't have a recall provision.
Well.
So that's the feedback I got, and that's the only reason why we're re-adjudicating this.
Well,
And it's fine. I just want to make sure if we're going to stand by our original decision, I am cool. I just, I feel my obligation is to share with you guys, if we're getting pushed back on something, then I think we need to know it and then just make sure we still feel the way we feel about it before we move to the next level. That's all.
I still like what we had originally.
Okay. So the question is,
Make a motion.
that we, then, I guess the proposal then, if Bill were to make the proposal, would be
To retain the language that we previously voted on.
okay,
Second.
okay. Bill,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Corey,
No.
Nikki?
This is a really hard one because I did not support that high threshold before.
And
So,
it come out so strongly in the survey.
yeah, I'm gonna
Point of
say
order?
no. I'm gonna say no.
Okay,
You have a point of order.
Jack,
Yes.
Steve,
No.
Russ?
No.
Eileen?
No, I gave this some thought. I read this morning and I thought, you know what? 30 is just too high. So that's a no for me.
Okay. Jess?
Based on survey feedback, I'd have to say no.
Okay, that's it, no. Okay, so that goes down. Okay, so let's have a proposal as to, Eileen, you want to make a proposal?
20%.
Any comment, question?
Otherwise it goes 25.
The proposal on the floor
To
is,
be clear, which 20% are you referring
we're
to?
talking about the one to get it on the signatures to compel an election.
Is that?
No, no, no.
No.
My point is made.
Okay, sorry, 20% of the voters.
That's right. That's what we voted on just now.
And the vote in the election.
And in lieu of 30.
Correct.
I'm going to say that because then it's very clear, in lieu of 30. So I just want to see if you're listening to what I was talking about. Okay, so that number shows up in, where's 30? I just want to make sure I have in the right section. And 8.6, 8-6, which is on page 4. It says now, notwithstanding any of the other provisions of this paragraph, if fewer than 30%, we're saying that 30% would change to 20%.
I'm looking at 8.6. I don't have another 30% there.
Second paragraph.
Second paragraph?
Oh, second. Okay, yep.
All right? So that's what we're talking about. We're all in agreement that's what we're talking about, right? Okay. So 20% is the proposal.
I would say that.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All right. Bill,
No.
Matt,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Nikki,
Yes.
Jack,
No.
Steve,
Yes.
Russ,
Yes.
Eileen,
Yes.
Jess,
Yes.
Betsy, yes. It wins 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8-2. Okey dokey.
So the recall.
That's it, the recall we got.
Elections is complete.
Okay.
Uh,
Election and recall complete. Okay, now we're on a roll. The next is term limits.
What?
You all have the write-up from Collins Center. I shared with you some input that I received in terms of public input. So let's discuss. As you can see from the Collins Center, term limits are relatively rare in Massachusetts for local elected officials. None of our 6 peer communities have a term limit provision. That they are aware of only a handful of towns.
Reading, is it something that came to us?
Yeah,
It's the memo from the call center.
The 23rd?
Term limit
Yeah, it's
overview.
Okay.
term limit overview.
Yep, dated 23rd.
So I'm just going to skim over this. The Collins Center is aware of a handful of local limits for elected officials in Massachusetts, including Methuen, the mayor and city councilors, school committee, Southbridge, town councilors, Newton school committee members, Barnstable town council, Lawrence, the mayor. Some recent attempts in creating term limits have failed. in Everett, Rockport, Ipswich, and Stoneham. Arguments weighing against term limits is voters already have an opportunity to limit terms of officials to regular election. And if enacted, a recall process. Furthermore, term limits potentially force officials to give up their positions even while they're still being effective. They can result in many vacancies at the same time. Elections can be less competitive if long-term candidates are no longer able to run. And finally, term limits can result in the loss of institutional knowledge, skills, and experience. Arguments for term limits include more frequent turnover of elected officials, potentially increasing new ideas in new community leaders. Limits may also encourage more people to run because open seats may draw multiple candidates, which may encourage diversity. For some boards, such as school committee, term limits may increase the likelihood that members have children that are active in the school system. And finally, term limits potentially focus elected officials to plan and accomplish an agenda within a certain timeframe. So one of the things they're suggesting we consider is the average term members have over the years and whether there's turnover even without term limits, and whether there have been multiple members running for each position even without term limits. And whether long-term planning would be impacted by the loss of institutional knowledge and the amount of time a newly elected volunteer to gain expertise of requirements of that position. I also want to bring your attention to the election analysis that we had from prior discussions. This is one they didn't date. I'm sorry that they didn't. But if you take a look at it, it was one of those where any score over 1 means that the election was competitive.
Yeah.
Okay, and we had over time, pretty much everything was at 1. There were a couple at 1.5, and there were a couple at 2. 2024 was a big year. I guess that's why we saw all the people that coming out. For the moderator, school committee, and then housing authority was 1.5 on that year. Not on that one. Oh, they don't have a select board on there. Oh, they do. No, 1.5 for select board.
Yeah.
So, so it looks like any score over 1 means it's competitive. I mean, we don't have people running out to run for positions. I mean, that's the punchline. And I think we know that.
Yes, we do. And why don't we? You know how hard it is to convince someone to run for a townwide office?
I'm concerned about vacancies if we put an artificial limit on how long someone can serve. You know, I think institutional knowledge is important. I also think having fresh ideas is important. However, you know, volunteerism, it can be tricky.
Right.
We limit someone to 3 terms. Is that a lifetime?
Huh?
Is that a lifetime, or if they skip a year, they can go again and start again?
Well, I think there's 2 parts. There's a consecutive
Yeah.
term limit that can be discussed, and then obviously there's the finite term limit.
I don't think
Virginia
it does
does
call a
government.
lifetime limit on
The
something.
government consider 1 term and then.
Right, but I think on a state level, I mean, I don't know how many have term limits even on a state level.
Well, do you mean infinite term limits or consecutive or both?
I think let's talk in concept, just term limits in general, whether that's something that we want to talk about. I think we have all the background information. We don't have it. None of our comparator companies have it. Towns have it. And in looking at term limits throughout the state, it just does not appear. And the town level to have a thing.
And if we look at the towns here that the Collins Center gave us, most of those have a city council type of government. And my fear is if we don't have enough people running the offices and excluding incumbents, contributes towards that, that could push us towards a city council form of government where you have fewer people running for office. And I'm not in favor of us being nudged in the direction of city council form of government.
But Jack, on the flip side, you could say the reason why people aren't running is because there are no term limits. And you know, the incumbents, they have an advantage, right? I mean, they have the name and they have infrastructure. They have allegiance, you know, by groups and whatnot, and years of not doing favors for
So
people, but
incumbents never get defeated?
so what?
Incumbents never get defeated?
In Massachusetts, almost never,
I was
truly.
gonna say, who?
Here in town, yeah.
Yeah, let's, I want to focus us on town. I think it's not really clear what they do in Massachusetts or Virginia or anywhere else. We're focused on Burlington. That's who we are and that's what we're focused on.
But by the way, just as an aside, I looked at the Reading Charter today, and only the Finance Committee, they have a limit of, a term limit, 3 consecutive terms. Anyway, just FYI.
I think if you're an incumbent, you do build a constituency because people see your actions, whether or not you're following through on the things that you say that you'll do, and you do get support that way. And I don't think that's a bad thing either. So I wouldn't discount that or say that that's not a good thing for someone to have cultivated over so many terms or only a few. I don't know.
And I will say that, I get your point, but I think she's making a point too, because having been someone who was new and never been elected, you work just as hard to get those votes. The first time you run when no one knows your name, almost sometimes I feel like you run harder when you're the incumbent, because again, if there's somebody who's challenging you, we just recently had a lot of people challenging in school committee. You're working just as hard as everybody else, and you have to, win on, what you as, like she was saying, proven that you're doing what you said you were going to do, and people vote for you, hopefully, because you are following through and, responding to people and, representing people the way they like you to for whatever the position is you're running for. And so
I'd like to hear from the committee.
Yes.
That's okay. I value your opinions, but I just want to make sure that all the people on the committee have a chance to speak on this issue as well.
I don't think incumbents have the advantage some people have. There are some people who will never vote for an incumbent. As an incumbent, you can tick some people off. So I don't think there is any giant advantage to incumbents.
Well, name recognition, although that could be a negative.
There is no concentration of influence when it comes to incumbents who have been there for a long time, and also knowing the type of profile that comes out for voting. It's going to lean towards the people that they have voted for before or have known. And so I think for me, I agree, like there is this balance of institutional knowledge, learning curve, being able to see through, longer term projects, but at the same time, that concentration of influence and being able to support the evolution of the community is something I'd like to explore, discuss.
Is there also like a theoretical maximum? Imagine any position. If someone was there for 50 years, does that feel like, that's too much? And you might say, in your mind, as you start to play that game, then you balance that with, does the natural process of voting fulfill the needs of that turnover? Because, boy, if we all thought 50 years was too long, well, then they probably wouldn't get elected 50 years, worth of serving. So I think on the one hand, in my mind, there's probably some amount of, at some point we want to see turnover, and we almost want the system to encourage that, because you want that. Now, that said, we also did just add recall, and recall helps. I mean, again, that's an extreme case, but it does provide a release valve for if things are something's out of whack. I mean, they're different, so I don't want to totally overlap, but as the Collins Center pointed out, that plays into the equation a little bit.
Okay, any other comments?
I would say that, term limits are, an extremely popular measure, but I don't think that's because they necessarily want it's because people like tend to not like the built-in advantages that incumbents have. And so, we have to consider like what kind of solution will like address name recognition as a factor, which I feel, in an ideal world would be a non-factor. Like we should be looking at what people have done, what they want to do, what they believe. I don't think there is a solution for, making sure everyone is voting purely based on just ideas that involves like an institutional measure like term limits. Sorry if that was a bit of a word salad, but
Do you support it or not? I'm not.
I generally don't support term limits except for like really high up leadership positions. But I mean, even then, it should be up to the people every time. In a perfect world, people would look in, see everyone's descriptions, see their ideas, see their track record, and vote accordingly. And I hope we get to that. But right now, especially in Burlington, like focusing in on Burlington, not Massachusetts, as was said before, term limits would result in a lot of empty seats. And I will say, we do see a lot of people running to be appointed when there isn't the threat of incumbency. I was originally running against 6 incumbents myself for town meeting. I know how that feels. But yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Steve, do you have any comments?
I just looked quickly today to see what implementing term limits actually does that achieve what people are trying to achieve? Does it get more people to run? Does it get more? And I didn't do extensive research, but it seems as though it's the results are mixed. So it doesn't always work out the way people that think it will work out.
Okay.
I think too, it's a balance of like discretion is a better part of valor, like we were talking about earlier. Like it would be a big change, and maybe the biggest change that we've kind of talked about here. And this is something that still has to be approved by the select board and passed by town meeting. And I don't know that town meeting would support term limits.
Okay.
I mean, the problem with, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I say the problem with, 11 comments is sometimes, it's easier to sort of moan and groan about it instead of, I don't know what, try to find, raise your hand yourself or I
Find
don't
somebody
know.
who would do it. Matt, how about a comment from you?
I mean, I've always kind of been in favor of term limits. I get the argument, oh, well, that's the point of the election, but at the same time, I still feel like term limits is also kind of a check and balance on the system. How this would be implemented, I don't know. I would maybe like to see language for how that would look for Burlington, because would you retroactive back to a certain election or something? When would it begin? But it's something I've always been in favor of, and we've heard from the people with the survey, they're in favor of it too.
What was the numbers on the survey?
I was just looking now. Of the 1,080 responses, large majorities of residents favor term limits for a significant number of 19 municipal bodies. So broken down by body, it was school committee 73%, select board 68%, planning board 64%, zoning board of appeals 54%, board of assessors 53%, housing authority 53%, ways and means 52%. And then it goes lower, I presume, under 50 after that. Yeah, it does. The chart goes under 50% for things after that.
Again, it doesn't have to be a blanket term limit for every single elected position for Reading.
But would it make sense, like, not trying to dodge the issue, but would it make sense, like, I think we need to address that the public spoke to us with this. But if we're deciding in the better part of valor avenue, if that's where the committee decides to go, I think it would be wise for us to say that this is a thing that absolutely would need more digging, more evaluation.
Yeah.
again, I don't want to push the committee either way at the moment. I'm pretty much ambivalent, but I care that we address the concern and that we make sure that this is an issue that if it isn't specifically enacted now, it absolutely is looked at in depth in the future.
So part of the recommendations for future charter committees to look at.
Potentially, and maybe something around what information needs to be collected now to help.
Well, further study and let other people figure out what that is.
Well,
Okay, go ahead, Jessica.
no, I was gonna say what's interesting, you know, you were repeating back the numbers of like the percentage of where people felt like the term limits should be. Also are the more competitive ones for Burlington pretty consistently. Select board, school committee, planning board leans a little bit lower, but still it's over one consistently. So it's interesting to dig into those. I'm surprised constables over one, because again, we're like, what the hell is the constable? But anyways. So I think it's worth some digging and some discussion.
I would like to weigh in on this one.
Yeah.
I don't think we should recommend that this be in the charter. I don't think there's any compelling reason to add it, either in terms of the criteria we've used in past discussions, the comparable communities, the state of Massachusetts in terms of other towns. There is, the survey did indicate it, but you know, you have to dig into the demographics of where that was all coming from. And I think it was, and I have to go back and look at what she said, but it said to me that the people who are in the know, like people who are more knowledgeable about town government, were less likely to want term limits than the people who weren't. There's a lot of factors. I am concerned we don't have enough people to run for offices, and that's a reality, and for a whole bunch of reasons that probably have nothing to do with competitiveness, in my opinion, but just what it takes financially to run a campaign. Personally, if you have a job and you have to go out and talk to the Council of Aging at noon, because that's when you get that group, can you take the time off? There are a lot of factors that get into whether people can run for office or not. I don't see it being supported, to Nikki's point, by town meeting. I think it's a loser for this charter, and just for all of those reasons rolled up into one. And I could probably talk more about it, but I won't. I think you get the point. I just don't support it at all.
So if the limit is 3 terms, they can do one in the planning board, one in the school committee, one in the select committee, they're done?
No, it would be by position.
Yeah.
Who knows? No one's proposed language for this.
No.
Very detailed.
Yeah, that was an awfully.
What we're trying to do is say the concept of term limits, period. We're at the higher level of abstraction. I don't want to spend a moment of our time going through the details, like Jack has offered some, of how it might work.
I just ask questions.
I know you do, and you're so good at it.
People don't like the answers, their problem.
Whether the committee has the appetite for term limits. If we don't have the appetite for it, let's just put it away and move on to the next.
Can I make a motion in the positive?
Yes?
I move to recommend term limits and have further discussion as a body.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, so that's a positive. All right, Bill,
No.
Matt,
Yes.
Corey,
No.
Nikki,
No.
Jack,
No.
Steve,
No.
Russ,
No.
Eileen.
No.
Whit?
No.
Okay, thank you. Jess?
No.
Betsy, no. Okay, it's done.
I though would like to make a motion that it is put in our recommendation / report that term limits be reviewed and researched further outside of the government review committee.
Second.
General bylaw committee, or
No, just as a follow-up,
Just outside of this committee.
Yeah, as a
I
follow-up.
would like it in the report.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I agree. Can you make note of that one, please?
Well, are we gonna put it in Matt's?
Yeah, but it's also gonna go in the report, so I want to make sure that
Yeah.
we make note in the report too.
All of that is, yeah.
Okay?
I didn't
You
get to
take
vote.
that vote again? Because there was definitely at least one no.
But you don't want it in the report?
No,
Okay, so we have one no. It still goes in the report.
that's fine. I want to get my voice.
You got your voice still. Okay. Really? Thank you. I think we got.
Finance and fiscal procedures is the last thing.
Yeah, finance, and that is, we're gonna do that next meeting. Two reasons. One is because it's too late. Two is I have feedback from Ways and Means that they provided that to me that I sent to the Collins Center, which they incorporated some of that into the draft you just got this time. I want you to see what Ways and Means said before we get into the discussion. So, some of what they said is incorporated, other things are not incorporated, and we probably need to make.
So there'll be an updated one from.
No, you've got the one from the Collins Center. And that reflected the Ways and Means document that I forwarded to them. When I saw it come back, I compared the two and I said, I don't feel like the committee has the information they need in order to have a thorough discussion. I want you guys to all see what Ways and Means said, and so that we can decide whether things that were not included we want not to be included or included. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So you're gonna send on the comments that the Ways and Means Committee had to us before the next meeting?
Absolutely going to do that. And our next meeting is next
August 4th.
Right, and I believe we are actually going to be elevated to the room with sound.
You get to sit in the big chair.
Yeah. So,
Get to hear us.
Can we quickly go through the meeting dates for August and September?
yeah,
Or can you send those?
well, it's the 2nd and the 4th, but we have
August 4th at 6.
August 4th, and then the next one after that is the regular scheduled. We need to see where we are after the 4th, because if we're really close to being done, then we may have to do one more additional meeting.
Would that be the 18th or the 25th?
Yeah, it would be, if we have to do another special meeting, it would be that next week, which would be the 4th, the 11th, the 18th.
18th.
Which is the regularly scheduled one?
This
11th.
11th and 25th.
So if you could just hold the 18th, anybody, please?
I'm away the 15th, or the 18th and the 25th.
Yeah.
You better change your plans.
Yeah, you tell my kids we're not going to Disney.
Yeah, call from Space Mountain.
Bill said we're not going to Disney.
Is there anybody not on vacation on the 18th of August?
I'm checking out vacation, I'll be home,
As of
so I
now,
can be
no.
a sucker and show up.
As of now, no.
Okay, I just want to see if we'd have a quorum.
Actually, West Virginia.
Are you people around for quorum? Yes, okay. So just hold the 18th. I'm hoping we don't, if we don't need it, we won't do it. But I think we're really, really, really close to being done with the charter. And I have Lisa Mead, I'm feeding her the drafts as we go. And so she can be reviewing it. So I actually think we, with one last grunt, can hit this deadline as we had planned.
All right,
That would be good. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Second.
Anybody object?
No.
Alrighty.
Thank you again for all of this. Based on people who come in and listen to you all talk about things. It's a good experience.
Well, thank you for coming to get off.
We got that. Sprinklers? Yeah.